Good morning, everyone. Namaskar. On behalf of UNIDO and the UN India Business Forum, I welcome all of you to this webinar today. As we are all aware, the unusual situation presented by COVID-19 has impacted all industry and particularly wreaked havoc on the MSME sector in India, a segment which is the backbone of our national economic structure. As the world slowly comes back to normal, or the new normal as it is now being called, what does it mean for our MSMEs? What are the new strategies that will need to be put in place? What is the recalibration that needs to be done? To share some insights in this area, I'm delighted to introduce to you our chief guest and our esteemed panelists. We are extremely honored and privileged to welcome the Honorable Minister, Shri Pratap Chandra Sarangi ji, Honorable Minister of State for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises and for Animal Husbandry, Dairy and Fisheries. Shri Sarangi ji, wish you a very warm welcome. Namaskar. इस MSME के मंच पर आए आपका भव्य भव्य स्वागत है। हम आपके बहुत आभारी हैं कि आपने हमें अपना बहुमूल्य समय दिया। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। I'd like to welcome Renata Desalian, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in India. Wish you a very warm welcome, Renata, and thank you for being with us today. Mr. Shohab Rais, the Chief Operating Officer of Tata Chemicals. Mr. Rais has over 30 years experience in manufacturing and operations, and amongst other accolades, has done some brilliant pioneering work in the area of unique supply chain solutions. We wish you a very warm welcome, Mr. Rais, and thank you for joining us. Mr. Vishal Sharma, Assistant Executive Director of the Dalmia Bharat Group. As head of operations across multiple sectors during the span of his career, Mr. Sharma has managed the most complex supply chain and cold chain operations across India. We wish you a very warm welcome, Mr. Sharma. And last but not least, Dr. Renee Van Berkel, the Chief of UNIDO in India. Welcome, Renee. I'd like to begin by inviting Renata for your opening remarks. Over to you, Renata.
You're on mute, Renata.
Renata is mute.
Yeah.
Again mute.
Yes, now we can.
Excellent. No matter how many times I participate in these kinds of online meetings, somehow I still am not mastering the technology yet. Please excuse me. Honorable Minister of State for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, Mr. Pratap Chandra Sarangi, Mr. Saad Rais, COO of Tata Chemicals, Mr. Vishal Sharma, Assistant Executive Director of Dalmia Bharat Group, my colleague Renee, participants. I see we're now at 71 participants, so it's a good turnout. I will just make some very general remarks. You are the specialists, and I think we're in extraordinary times right now. I don't think you need me to tell you that. So I will make some very general remarks, and then we'll turn over to the more technical side of the discussion. There's no question in my mind that COVID-19 has turned us on our head and put the world into a big spin. It's unprecedented in our lifetime. It's even unprecedented in our parents' lifetime. If you go back to the Spanish flu, even our parents don't remember that. It was before their time. Not only has it inflicted untold suffering around the world, but it's also exceeded all our capabilities to, or all our tools to manage risk and to manage contingency planning. And it's actually questioned our very approach to managing uncertainty in many ways. There's nothing more certain these days than our common uncertainty. There may be pundits out there who would like us to believe differently, but the truth of the matter is that we've never seen anything like this before, and nobody really knows for sure what lies ahead. We're still learning the most basic characteristics about the virus, how it infects different organs in our body, whether the antibodies that we get from it are going to protect us from reinfection or not, whether, when the peak will happen, the epidemiological peak will happen, whether there'll be one peak or two peaks or many peaks. None of us know the answers to these questions. And equally, when it comes to the economy, we have many unknowns in front of us. And I think it's important that we recognize that, and I think it's a moment for rather great humility on the part of mankind in general. None of us know what a pandemic economy really is. How do you restart economy from an induced coma, particularly in a global environment in deep freeze? What will the recovery look like? Will it be a V shape? Will it be a U shape? Will it be some other shape? Should governments be pulling out right now all their fiscal stimulus guns to try to get to the V shape? Or do they need to hold back for future epidemiological curves and peaks, rather? Should we be constrained by the old rules of fiscal discipline, or do they no longer apply? There's no economist that will really agree on that right now. And it's partly because economists is an area where no economists usually agree, but it's also because we're facing a completely unknown situation. If these rules don't apply anymore, how are countries, and indeed how is the international community, going to deal with cascading sovereign debt crises? Furthermore, amidst these unknowns, we're struggling with a moral and ethical dilemma, because it's not as if everything was fine before COVID-19 hit us. The crisis has laid bare the best of humanity and the worst of humanity in societies around the world. And it's exposed our underlying economic fragilities. Do we really want to return to a model that fostered such incredible inhuman inequalities around the world, in the North and in the South? Do we really want to return to a model of development that led to such devastation of our natural environment? Not only are we having to sail the ship as we build it, we're obliged to remodel the ship as we're sailing it on an open sea, and we're having to rechart our course with no nautical maps and only very intermittent meteorological readings. I don't want to sound pessimistic, because I'm not generally pessimistic. No one who works at the UN can be pessimistic. I have enormous faith in the human spirit and in our innate humanity and our resilience and our capacity for ingenious solutions, often on a shoestring. And I have enormous faith in India and in Indians to find those innovative, creative, resilient solutions. But I think we have to admit that there is no roadmap, either in India or anywhere else in the world. We do, however, have a compass. And what is that compass? It's the United Nations Member States Agenda 23 and the SDG goals. The crisis invoked by COVID-19 is exposing the precise failures that Agenda 2030 and the SDGs were meant to address. In many ways, it's the failure to achieve the SDGs and the MDGs before them that have made countries around the world so vulnerable to the multiple impacts of COVID-19. The recovery must therefore find ways and means to capitalize on the opportunities created by this overwhelming crisis to get back on track for the SDGs. The recovery must be fair, it must be green, and it must be inclusive. And the role of MSMEs, and in both the issue of supply chains that we're going to be discussing today, but also in building back better, is really critical. And I'd like to extend my sincere appreciation to the Honorable Minister and the government of India that have placed such a strong emphasis on the role of MSMEs in the recovery to build back better here. I'd like to also compliment my UNIDO colleagues and Renee in particular for the B3C platform, which is obviously an important tool in helping to navigate in these uncharted territories. So those are the end of my remarks, and I look forward to hearing the specialists now go into depth in the various areas that you'll be discussing today. Thank you so much, and namaste.
Thank you so much, Renata. That was indeed insightful. And I'd like to now invite Renee to tell us a little bit more about the platform, as well as his experience in working with the MSMEs so far. Over to you, Renee.
Thank you, and I hope you can also see the screen. So first of all, let me also express the appreciation on behalf of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization to the Honorable Minister of State, Mr. Pratap Singh, for joining us here. UNIDO is the Industrial Development Organization. We work particularly in the MSME sector on issues of productivity, innovation, inclusiveness, and sustainability. Exactly those items that Renata was just referring to as the SDGs. But I would like to basically, Renata set the context that we are in uncharted times. We don't have a roadmap. We might have a compass on where we approximately need to go, but we need to navigate the way while we are on the road. And that is particularly difficult for MSMEs, which have more limited resources. I wanted to basically talk a little bit about what UNIDO has done over the last couple of months and how we are trying to assist the MSME sector. So we started with a stock take, which was already during lockdown 1, so at the first weeks of April, and we saw that manufacturing came to a standstill. And that basically for the MSMEs, there were 5 areas where issues were very prominent there, and they all added to what is then commonly referred to as the cash flow crunch, so ongoing expenses but no income. And that the 5 areas were basically the issue of uncertainty. So it's not only the uncertainty on how COVID will evolve, but it's also the uncertainty on what is the issues related to the policy measures that are needed, what will be the markets. In the markets particularly, there's a plummeted demand, so demand came from 100 down to 0 overnight in some sectors. And we have seen the images of people wanting to go back to their home villages and how manpower has changed over. We see companies wanting to restart right now, but they can't because the manpower is not there. Then there has been issues on basically equipment and inventory standing idle for 2 weeks, for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and then basically losing and depreciating, decaying over time. And then the issue of 5th here, which we focus on today, is basically the disrupted supply chain. But then basically also came then that the stimulus package, and we acknowledge the government has made quite profound commitments to also help the MSME sector, but they can overcome the cash flow crunch, but that is in itself is not enough to really resurface or rebuild the manufacturing sector. So that has been the thrust of our work in the last 6 weeks or so. So we came up with this initiative of building back business from crisis, and it's very much basically also building back better, where we say we have to operate in a platform, in an online environment to help the MSME sectors, because we cannot go and handhold everyone, but we want to provide a framework for action and use also crisis as an opportunity. Renata also referred to that. We had some deficiencies in the past, so if we rebuild, can we do it better, and can we contribute to inclusive and sustainable transition? So we set up this online system as a way of by topic, where we have tutorials, which are basically videos. Then we have a knowledge base, which is fact sheets, checklist, other operational guidelines. And then we have the kind of the webinars, which we've been doing a few like today. And then we are looking for the MSME application on whether we can get the cluster associations and others involved in actually assisting their members to look at some of the topics which are being addressed here. This is a partnership for development. I would like to particularly acknowledge that the UN India Business Forum, which is co-hosting this event, the India Small and Medium Entrepreneurs Forum, and Empatech, which is the Entrepreneurship Development Program. So this was in the first launch, partial launch was on the 30th of April by Honorable Suresh Prabhu. So it is structured on one side as a back to business roadmap, which you see here, and which is basically 5 steps where we think that first businesses should look at planning to recover. So it's not like just restart where you've left off, but think about what still makes sense in a changed health, society, and business scenario, and work out an actionable plan to capture opportunities. Now, we put quite some emphasis on ready the workplace, and many places have done this now. So to make sure that we are taking the COVID measures so that we not workplaces become infection places as well. So keeping the social distance in the workplace, avoid common touch points, do temperature scans, but also look at inventories, whether they decayed, what had happened to the equipment, so we can start safely again there. Then the third one is basically restart to recover. So there will be issues like broken supply chains, workforce, which has changed over. So how can we, in the kind of the problem solve mode, restart business? And I think many businesses are somewhere between 2 and 3 right now, to have started to operate at a limited scale, trying to find ways forward. Then the 4 would be to bring back growth to business by doing better what you're already good at, and doing differently what you're already good at. So how can we use the core competencies of businesses to bring new growth areas? And we've seen that some companies have started to do new things like textile garment stitching, have started to manufacture PPE, so stitching masks and so on. And we see new opportunities there. And ultimately, we also need to look at thinking ahead and planning for continuity, so that traditional continuity planning that we had was insufficient. So how can we do that better? So if you then see, okay, how does this look like? This is the kind of this setup which you get if you go into the tutorials. Now I go too fast. I wanted to show this kind of fact sheets, this is the operational guidelines, and then you see some additional resources. So that's the kind of the setup that we have. And then we take this saying from John F. Kennedy, even though the Chinese language would say it's not right, but basically crisis is the combination of danger and opportunity. So we are in a crisis for sure, but can we also take that as an opportunity? And we looked at this from different angles, and then basically see there are 7 areas in which we would like to say, let's look at how we can do better. And these 7 areas on the sidelines are then looking at how we enterprise in enterprises, how do we deal with the financing, how do we deal with customer relations, how do we set up supply chains, operations, manpower, and occupational health and safety. Because we have to do things for COVID, proving our enterprise. So can we take this as a bigger initiative to look at all aspects of occupational health and safety? So if I zoom in on the kind of what is in there in our program for supply chain, then you see here that we address the supply chain both in terms of upstream, so that is your suppliers, then internal operations on how do you do the inventory, the stuff, the stocks, and so on, and how do you work then with downstream part. And we notice that there are basically disruptions, smaller and bigger, and depending on where you are in the supply stream, upstream, internal, and downstream. And we saw that even before the lockdown in India, there were already issues because of upstream supplies not coming forward. So in the automotive sector, companies were starting to have shortage of supplies from China, from overseas in that area. Then we try to provide in each of these tutorials kind of key areas where small business could improve. So if we talk about supply chain, then there's a way to look at how can we look at supplies, can we have alternative supplies, alternative parts, can we work with alternative suppliers, what can we do in terms of logistics, and can we change the way we run procurement processes to also address the challenges which are there in terms of the financing. And then we come forward in the tutorials with specific action points. So how can we, in this case with supplies, how can we look at alternative products, alternative inputs? Can we look at local suppliers in those areas? So that's the kind of the platform has that in that way. So I'll try to show the website as well. It's B3C MSME. I apologize that at the moment it's only in English, but Hindi and Bengali versions are under development, and Hindi should be up in another week, and Bengali might be taking us another 10 days. So I think I need to stop share and then reshare. To go to So you should be able to see, this is the website where you, can you see the website? So this is where you come in, and then you see here the roadmap. It links to the different modules. So if I click then on plan to recover, you should come here, and then you see here the link to the tutorial. You have here then the download links for the checklists, which give you then kind of the elements with the questions and the specific suggestions. I mean, this is very, of course, very quick, what I can only do right now, but then we go to the back to home, and then we can also go to internet is a bit slow. We can also go then back to what I just mentioned, the supply chain here. So I mean, it doesn't make too much sense to navigate through, but this is then the links to the videos and the other components. So I would really encourage people to have a look, take it for your own experience, see what is in there. And we are also setting up then the Get Involved. So there is a group of the UNIDO staff and associates that will try to address specific issues. And the plans moving forward is that we are actually trying to work with clusters on how can we help specific MSMEs on some of these issues, with the idea of building back business, but then doing that in terms of a restart, so safe restart, then recovery of what still makes sense, and then revitalize for building back better. So with this, thank you very much. I hand over back to Gauri as the moderator. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you for sharing with us details about the B3 site. May I now request our Honorable Minister to share his vision on the way forward. MSME से जुड़े हुए सभी वर्गों का इस सिचुएशन का क्या उधार होगा? मंत्री जी, over to you.
Namaskar. Thank you all. I am especially thankful to Ms. Renata Da Celina and Dr. Rene van Berkel, UNIDO representative, for having organized this beautiful program, webinar, and having invited me to share my ideas. The theme is quite interesting and challenging, and so I congratulate you all. And I have been fortunate enough to exchange my ideas with you. And you are already experts in all these fields, and I am a newcomer because I became a minister. I had the opportunity to speak in our country. We believe that ministers are all-knowing persons. You will not be astonished if somebody invites me to speak on quantum theory. So I have to learn many things from you. But today our concern is how to revive our social life, our economic structure. That's a challenge world over. And this rampant spread of COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent consequent lockdown has adversely affected the global economy, and the economy in recession, with global economic projected to shrink by 3.2%. And the disruption caused by this outbreak containment measures have left a deep impact on the global manufacturing sector, and companies across the globe have been desperately trying to streamline their supply chains and to build up their industries. The economy of India cannot be an exception to this. This has also been very seriously affected, and MSME being the largest sector of employment, second largest sector of employment after agriculture, is sure to be affected. Now we have to think globally everything, and the whole world is one unit. We cannot think of separately, because a single atom of this universe cannot move without dragging the whole universe in its wake. So under this situation, the economy of India, revival of the economy of India is a challenge to us. My government is committed to support the MSME, reviving their businesses, and recently announced financial packages by our Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Finance Minister. Is no doubt a great boon, and I am happy that the mission of this package is, as announced by our Prime Minister, to build an Atmanirbhar Bharat, India standing on its own feet, and MSME has a great role to play in this field. Prime Minister has told global, vocal for local with global outreach. That is our mission. Sisters and brothers, COVID-19, post-COVID-19 world will be a different world. No doubt, pre-COVID and post-COVID world will see a long gap in every field, in the field of manufacturing, in our supply chain, in our businesses, in our agriculture, in our socio-economic life. In a post-lockdown world, supply chain stress tests will be a new norm. And this COVID-19 has revealed that our supply chain has many defects, our weaknesses that has been revealed. So we have to think in a new manner. I also see there is huge opportunity for Indian companies, and we can encourage foreign investors also to our country because of the business-friendly, eco-friendly atmosphere in India, and so we can also attract them. I'm very happy to see that our MSMEs are being encouraged by the UNIDO, and the UNIDO is also having is encouraging our MSME units. UNIDO, with input from its partners, has developed a knowledge and collaboration platform which will be quite beneficial to our MSMEs. And we have also made MOUs with various patient designing institutes and universities to send our rural talents to global platform. I have been told that this collaboration is receiving encouraging feedbacks from different sectors, and appropriate readiness activities are advised as a post-lockdown phase. My ministry has been working very closely with UNIDO and on implementation of this mutually agreed UNIDO India country program. We are pleased that UNIDO is playing a key role in all these fields, and especially in the promotion of textiles, agro-waste MSMEs, foundry, and MSME clustered programs. And so I am thankful to you all. I trust our industries need to strengthen on three fronts. Especially, we should think of how to reduce the cost of production. That is, even in the field of agriculture, in the field of manufacturing, in the field of services, we should be very prudent in reducing our cost of production, and we should put stress on a robust supply chain, the logistics and mechanism for a robust supply chain. And the third one is improvement of our quality. We cannot make any compromise with the quality. Quality will invite buyers. Now the fourth one, which I put emphasis on, that unless the capacity of purchasing capacity of our common man is increased, all these production and supply chain may not be beneficial, may be counterproductive. So you shall have to think of that. I remember Swami Vivekananda told, India lives in cottages. And Mahatma Gandhi also said, unless these 7 lakh villages are improved, the comprehensive national growth is not at all possible. So we have to focus on our rural development to improve the standard of living of our people, rural people. Simply economic help will not do. There should be many behavioral changes also, because they have many good habits. They are also addicted to many bad things, and we should inspire them to lead a better life. You can take the horse to the river, but you cannot make it drink unless there is an internal desire, urge for growth. We cannot do that. So even the poor people are addicted to drinking. I remember 20 years back, a man serving in a veterinary hospital got 5,000 rupees towards his salary, and he came in the street taking liquor, and being influenced by these intoxicants, he called a bull. Oh, very pyare dost, please come, my friend. And he gave the 5,000 rupees to its mouth, and he swallowed it. Then he started crying when he came to know what he has done. So we shall have to impress upon them to educate themselves, to have some behavioral changes, and to strive for a better life. We should provide them better livelihood also, and then only we can expect a tangible change. We need to establish manufacturing linkages also. And Gandhiji told that not mass production, but production by masses are the solution to our economic problems. Unless money goes to everybody, so how can you desire? One man having a filaria, one leg is filaria, another leg is polio, cannot be said to be a healthy man. So there should not be this unbridgeable gap between the rich and the poor. There will be gap, no doubt. By the nature, it will be the gap, but there should be a reasonable gap. In average growth of the common man is quite important nowadays, so that they will come off for the national growth, a comprehensive national growth. So average man's growth is quite essential, and now we shall have to put emphasis on our rural economy. Urban benefits with rural atmosphere. Now this COVID-19 is revealed that if the man is present, then the nature will laugh, nature will dance with joy. Now elephants are coming on the road, peacocks are dancing, and many animals are coming. Nature is very happy. A few months back in the parliament, there was hue and cry everywhere due to this pollution, extreme pollution, and everybody blamed at Parali, at the farmers. But this passionate inquiry reveals that Parali is responsible by 5% for this entire pollution. Contribution is only 5%, and the maximum percent, 95% responsibility goes to our industrial sectors, our vehicles, and the construction sector. We mercilessly kill the nature for this paper note. That is a dangerous tendency in everybody. We are not separate from the nature, and this is a dangerous tendency which we have inherited from the Western thinking, that struggle for existence and survival of the fittest without considering the impact on nature. So now we shall have to develop our mechanism in an eco-friendly manner. That we have to. I remember many scientists have been engaging themselves in finding out whether the principle of life is present in the planet Mars. So I think probably some are thinking, it has come in the media also, to go there and stay there permanently, because many scientists have warned that this whole planet Earth may be finished within 400-500 years because of this pollution. This single-use plastic is added to this entire gamut of pollution, and by 2020 it will be doubled their warmth. So probably they have been thinking that they will lift to Mars with their families, and they will survive there, because they cannot take these 1,000 crore people to planet Mars. It's impossible. So instead of leaving this earth and going there for a safe stay, I should rather say to make it habitable. जो वैज्ञानिकों ने अब सोच रहे हैं कि मंगल ग्रह में जाकर के निवास करने के लिए, मैंने उनको निवेदन करता हूं कि मंगल ग्रह में प्राण सत्ता की संधान करके उधर निवास करने के विपरीत उनको इस ग्रह में मनुष्य जीवन में मंगल का संधान करना है. ये आज बहुत जरूरी है. We shall have to develop our innovative ideas, our innovation, our research, everything else in this line. Man is a part of the family. Family is a part of the nation. Nation is a part of the world. World is a part of the universe. And universe is a part of Prakriti, nature. and nature is nothing but the shadow of Brahman. From the lowest atom to the highest Brahman, everything is interconnected. We discharge oxygen, we discharge carbon dioxide. Plants require carbon dioxide for their survival, and plants discharge oxygen. And this pranavayu is necessary for our survival. We are all interconnected. Although apparently they visualize only fighting, struggle, but inwardly we see the entire harmony within this whole creation. If we disturb this harmony chain, then we are to be finished. We shall have to think like that, globally, universally, and with this sweet harmony. We shall have to develop this future economy and the socio-economic life. We want to see a world which is free from diseases, a body free from diseases, a mind free from stress and strain, an atmosphere free from pollution, a society free from violence and exploitation, and an intellect free from prejudice and bias. And our businesses should be developed on these thinkings that will be beneficial for the whole world. And so I put more emphasis on our rural economy, our organic farming, our cattle farming, our Panchagabha industry based on cattle, so that it can be a very effective Gramodyoga, providing more employment. Our Khadi and Charkha mission, our honey mission, beekeeping, solar power plants, and transferring waste to wealth, waste management, river cleaning, green and clean villages. This should be our area of focus, so that we can have a very eco-friendly, very comprehensive growth, creating more happiness for others. And we want to see a happy world, a blissful world. And as you are the pioneers in this field, I can expect, I appeal to you all for this comprehensive growth. Put all your energies for this comprehensive, all-covering growth, and so that we will see a better world, a future will be better one, a happier world, a blissful world, and you all will shine in the sky like stars, in not only to be flowed away like a dry leaf in the wave of history, but to create history so that others will write it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mantri ji. That was beautiful. And I'd like to add, I'd like to say, aapke muh mein ghee shakkar, because the world that you are talking about is exactly the world that the UN also foresees, and the world that UN is also striving for, a clean, equal, green world. So I think we all need to collectively think about this, because this is the opportunity. Right or wrong, the disease has given us this opportunity to rethink what we are doing, reimagine what we are doing, and move forward for a better planet. And, you know, just to also cite one other piece that someone said, you know, you talked of going to the Mars. Somebody said, okay, to sustain the lifestyles that we are right now, we will need 3 planets, and we have only 1. So again, aapke muh mein ghee shakkar. Let's hope the future world is a much better, cleaner, and a greener world that we live in. Thank you so much for your lovely comments. बहुत अच्छा लगा आपको सुने. और I'd like to now move to our esteemed industry panelists. I'd like to begin by asking Mr. Rais, and then I'll ask you one question, and then we'll make it conversational. So my question, since you are on ground, and you are seeing what the reality is, what the actual situation is, what is the status of the supply chains and that you are encountering, and what are the key challenges that you see, the real important key challenges that you see and that you feel need to be addressed immediately and now? So I'd like to start with you, Mr. Rais, if you can share with us, and then Mr. Sharma, you can also share your perspective on this.
Thank you, Gauri, for the question and invitation. Before I start, I would like to thank Honorable Mantri ji and Rene, Renata, Unido, Gauri, Vishal. Welcome everybody, and want to welcome all the participants. Thank you very much. Gauri, on supply chain status currently, especially with regard to MSME. What I see is it's a mixed state. There are units over a period of time which have started. There are units which have started operating at uh, better than suboptimal levels, but there are also units which have not started at all. And critical issues which some of these units are finding are with related to their raw material supply chains, availability of adequate manpower, then clarity of guidelines right up to the level of the unit owners or the level of the local local administrative officers who are related. So there has been delay into the guidelines and reaching to the last mile, and those clarity sometimes created confusion in the supply chain. That led to some issues. Apart from that, many of the MSMEs are smaller in size. So logistics, maybe when we started, when this whole COVID and lockdown started, for about couple of weeks, logistics was affected to a large extent, but it has eased out significantly. But I think for MSME, this easing out is not as effective because their loading structure is possibly not full truckloads to a single destination because they supply piecemeal into different locations. So logistics to them is also a key challenge. Apart from that, the when you have to operate a unit, the availability of the skilled manpower, because there are two three issues which I find with manpower. One is the availability itself. Second, if the availability is there, people are available, their readiness to come and do work, because sometimes they have the fear of coronavirus. Sometimes there is a pressure from family. Sometimes there's a pressure from the society that why are you going? You take care of your health. Those kind of things. So I think communication is one area which is very critical, so that we are able to give right confidence to the people who need to move out of their home and contribute to the starting up of MSMEs, to the starting up of economic activities to much larger extent. Because MSME is a backbone of our economy. There are millions of units. With our own organization, more than 1,400 MSMEs are connected, and we do business of about more than 750 crores with MSMEs. So we are quite largely dependent on MSMEs. They're very important. So second thing is when you start, there are issues if the
I think the connection has probably gone off. Is everybody else on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think Mr. Rais's connection probably went off. Uh, okay. Yeah, sorry, we lost you for a little bit, Mr. Rais.
Yeah, sorry. So I was saying that by launching B3 C MSME portal, I think it's a great work because all MSMEs will not have the wherewithal or the resources to look at what's available, what's not available, what's contemporary, what is required to be done. So I think the next step would be to try and see how we increase the usage of the portal. So I think that's all from me for now.
Thank you, Mr. Rais. Mr. Sharma, what is your perspective from the ground?
Yeah, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I thank UNIDO for this great opportunity and it's my privilege to speak to everybody today. In fact, before I actually talk about the ground perspective, I would like to give a feel of the enormity of the supply chain in the industry where I'm working right now. So Dalmia Bharat Group is mainly into, it's an 8 years old organization, and it's into core in manufacturing of cement, sugar, refractories, and power and captive power. So the enormity of the supply chain can be gauged from the fact that there are about 25,000 dealers, 520 warehouses, 5,000 vehicles moving every day, around 13 plants across around 12 states. So once you see the kind of supply chain it involves, and it has an intertwine of various MSME logistics supply partners who are intertwined in this complete supply chain as in form of MSMEs. So before, and not only this, the business is not this business of manufacturing cement, sugar, and refractories is also closely related with mining. So these businesses have to be located with areas which are having availability of limestone as the primary material for the input for cement. Not only this, then there are a lot of input materials which come from various other organizations, like that there is a waste of steel industry. Steel slag has to come. Fly ash comes from the thermal power plants. Coal and coke comes from sometimes from outside, sometimes domestically. So there are multiple supply chains in the upstream, as Rene was talking about in his presentation. So there are multiple modes of supply chain, not only locations but modes. There is a rail movement. There are road movement. Where rail is about 10 to 15%, road is about 85%. Water, the waterways is currently at 0. So this is what is happening at the inbound. And since cement manufacturing is mostly domestic based, where most of the production happens domestically and the sales also happen domestically, and the supply chain disruption is not so enormous. So the supply chain disruption happened in the initial stages. First 2-3 weeks, there was a total freeze. There was absolutely nothing. We just couldn't do anything. Everything was just closed down. But I would give a great super compliment to the Indian government, the central government, and the state government, that they were able to come out with very clear, precise, timely, detailed guidelines, which came at almost flash speed and which went down right till the blocks and districts and panchayats. So as a result, in the first 3 weeks, there was a freeze, followed by we started gradually, luckily the cement production comes under continuous process and the mining comes under essential commodities. Hence, there was a kind of a let-up given by the government to commence these activities in an earlier time frame than others. Hence, this could start and 15%. We started with 15%, then we went up to 30%, 40%. Currently, we are about 50% and above. So this is the way it was earlier and the current status. And we are very thankful to all the there have been multiple support platforms which have been created by the government. Say, for example, the DPIIT has created a 24. So we get stuck with this sort of which Mr. Schwab was talking about. Been control room, and they have been directly sending it to the chief secretaries of the states, and hence they're very fast of ensuring that all these obstacles in supply chains are taken care of. So this is what this is where we are at today. And though there is a big problem with respect to availability of labor and drivers, which is still persisting, but it has been during the lockdown period, we had taken the Honorable Prime Minister's request very seriously. We ensured that all the people were paid in time, all the dealers took care of the drivers, all the food was given to them. The workforce was made to stay, and they were provided boarding and lodging and medical facilities and everything. So, and not only that, even medical facilities, and they were given, the calls were being made to them so that they did not feel, that high and dry, and they felt part of the system, and the dealer network, the use of technology, etc., etc. So we are right on track now, moving ahead with the complete, complete kind of vigor. And I would just want to thank the government and the government authorities for making it happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. Renee, would you like to take the conversation forward?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you both to Mr. Sharma and Mr. Ice for the comments. But before we go into the discussion, I would like to maybe thank the minister as well, because I understand he might need to move out and to the next part of his obligations for the day. But I don't want to let him go without maybe responding to a few comments which you've made, because you were saying that we need to really reflect also a little bit on this building back better. So we need to address this productivity, robust supply chain, quality, and these of course have been with all the success of the MSME sector also a little bit of the weakness of the sector, and that's also where UNIDO has been saying let's focus on with your ministry, with the Development Commissioner's office, let's focus on creating a culture of productivity and culture of quality, so that we can drive India forward, and with a focus on regional development, because we see on one hand there is the challenges from the existing MSMEs to operate with while the labor force has moved to regional areas, but that's also an opportunity that we could say we have an inflow of skilled workers into some of the regional areas that could maybe be deployed, that might not be that interested to go back because of what Mr. Rice was also referring to as the sort of the being scared to go back to work because of the health issues. You also highlighted the issues of innovation and the frugal innovation that might also be needed, so that we can add more value addition for the rural economies. And in that regard, maybe I can also refer to some of the work that UNIDO is doing on innovations in mainly focused on energy and climate, but also having much benefits to farmers. So we are supporting, for example, new technologies for cooling, instant cooling, and of the milk, so that we have a better quality at the milk collection centers, and that will benefit the farmers and so on. So there's many areas which you say, and you put it in the way we have to find produce with the mass. So that is the agenda of inclusiveness, which the UN refers to. Then you talk about we need to do it in a green way. We see the elephants coming back. We see the clean skies. So that is something that we should preserve out of this. So thank you very much, Minister, for sparing your time. Please feel free to resume your rest of your duties. We very much appreciate your contribution to this on behalf of the United Nations, specifically of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and the industry UN India Business Forum. Sorry, I need to get that right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
So I have other works, I may be permitted to leave.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Okay, then we would like to take the conversation forward. I would also like to highlight to all the participants that there is a question and answer box on your screen, and please use it to raise your questions as well. I wanted to maybe come, before we take the questions from the audience, maybe coming back to both of our panelists on kind of your both at the larger enterprises, and you've highlighted on having several thousands of MSME suppliers. But how do you see that you as a larger buyer and at the top of the supply chain, can you actually do something? How can you reach out and assist the MSMEs to getting back on their feet? Because that's ultimately also part of your success. So maybe I can ask Mr. Sharma to turn the roles to maybe elaborate a little bit on how you can work with your, or how Daumi Group is looking at working with suppliers.
Yeah, so before I talk about that, I would like to touch upon the two discussion points which the Honorable Minister was talking about, moving to the Mars, and you talked about frugal innovation. So I would like to mention that it is the MSME tool rooms of India who provided highly cost-efficient material for using the Mangalyaan, which went to the Mars at a very low-cost budget. So a lot of high compliments to MSMEs that it was the MSMEs who provided the various tools, various kits for this satellite which went to Mars. So so coming back to your question on how do you support your smaller MSMEs, as I mentioned, we have a dealer network of about 25,000 dealers spread all over the country, and during this lockdown, all the MSMEs, all our partners were it was ensured that all of them were paid well ahead of time, in the sense that there was no delay in payments done. That was taking care of their cash flows, and the smaller partners who had these drivers and all, and the warehouse men, they were made to stay in accommodation, and food was provided to them so that they took care of their all basic needs were taken care of. So these three things, and also ensuring that there was what we did was we made a cross-functional group in the organization, which had a cross-functional team made of sales, HR, corporate affairs, logistics, and so on and so forth. So there was a cross-functional team which was made, and the responsibility of this team was to ensure that firstly to ensure that the complete supply chain robustness and resilience is tested and maintained, and second was to keep sharing with each that there was a problem being faced by the logistics supply chain person. He was not able to solve it. He was then falling back to his cross-functional team instead of going back to his boss. There was a self-empowered cross-functional team which was able to ensure that timely decisions were taken and people moved forward, and flow of information happened. So these are the some ways through which we ensured that all our partners are taken care of. They were assured. There were frequent calls made. There were a lot of video conferences like we're doing now with them. Conference calls, WhatsApp groups. So continuous flow of information, so that the flow of it, the more communication and more open flow of communication you happen, the lesser and lesser the fear actually dissipates on its own. So these are some of the things which we did, and we are also continuously doing it ahead going forward, and we'll continue to do that as we move ahead in our business.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, from your business model, it's very much the MSMEs are in your dealer network. So I basically your sales force in that sense. So that and you kept them informed how you're moving forward, and this cross-disciplinary team and so on. So that I think is some messages we also hear elsewhere. So may I come back to Mr. Reis from your side, or how you have, or Mr. Sharma, you want to come in?
Yeah.
We also,
Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Sharma wanted to make an additional comment.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
So we also advised our MSMEs that they could, go for some of our suppliers. We also requested them whatever goods and services they had. We told them that they should go and register themselves on government e-procurement portals. We helped them through industry associations to undergo training on this. I'm sure you also would have heard on 15th of a couple of days back, there was a training held by industry associations, so that they could probably find more avenues for increasing their product lines and sales over and above what they were already doing.
Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Reis, from your side on the MSMEs, I think you have more MSMEs also in your supply chain, isn't it, as suppliers?
If you look at from our side, we divided into 3-4 different kinds of areas. One is the production side, second is on the logistics side, third is on the market side, and one is our own suppliers. So what we did when before the formal lockdown, national lockdown came, there were some states which had announced regional lockdowns and local lockdowns, and also coronavirus was there. So we had done some planning in the beginning, and what we had done, we had identified areas which we'll tackle, and we ensured that the manpower planning is such that the number of people accumulating at one time is less. So for all the contractors at our manufacturing site, we actually advise them, guided them as to how they should be doing, both taking care of hygiene, taking care of distancing, taking care of their own people. And we provided facilities in our township with our medical facilities. We created about 200 bed isolation center there. So we gave a lot of confidence to all the team. And then what we did, the people who were supplying us raw materials, when the lockdown was announced, we also manufacture some products which are coming in essential commodities like edible salt, etc., and food grade bicarb, food grades, pharma grade bicarb. So we were operating right from day one, and all the MSMEs who support us with packaging material, with other raw materials, they also fall in the same category, but they were not aware about how to get this thing started. So we wrote letters to the government officials, to chief secretaries, to principal secretary, to the collectors, to deputy collectors, and we send those copies to our MSME partners. And then the MSME partners, we supported our back to those government offices where the permissions were required to be done. And I'm very happy to share that for many places, within a couple of days itself, they started getting permissions to start their operations, and they started their working together. A second thing what we found was that the finances, they were stuck with finances. So although for MSMEs, there's a 45 days government norm for payments, but many places wherever we found that MSMEs are stuck with finances, we actually went ahead and made them advance payments. We changed the payment terms so that they are able to operate, and they are able to operate their units or to supply us also the materials. So that we tied up on one end. Second, and market side, where our distributors and logistics and supply chain partners, MSMEs, are there. So since the markets were shut for some time, but we knew that it's not going to be permanent. Markets will open, maybe gradually. Maybe some markets may open faster, some might take time. So we started moving material to the market side, which is closer to the customer. So we engaged with our supply chain partners, with our MSME distributors, with our logistics service providers, warehouses, and then we started moving. So they also had the work slightly changed to an extent to what normally was done. And when the opening up started happening, we were right there to service the customers, both in MSME sectors also and other sectors where the services were again rendered by our MSME service providers.
Okay, thank you very much.
One thing I would want to again add that for logistics MSME people, there was a lot of issue in the beginning of there was very, very low confidence. Even if the transporters wanted to move, the drivers were not ready to move. So we created kits for the drivers. We gave them communication and written down communication as what they should do. They should not come out, they should not meet, or they should not touch this ABCD4. What do's and what don'ts we gave them. Then we gave them kits, which would have a dry meal, which would last there for the entire trip. So if it is an 8-day trip, so we gave them meals for 8 days. So even if the meal is not available on the way on the highways, so they didn't have to worry about the meal. We gave them hand sanitizers, we gave them masks, we gave them soaps, and we gave them hand gloves. So they were confident that their health is being taken care of. We are worried about them, and they would not have any issues on the way. So all those MSME transport operators also could help us in that, and that's what one of the additional things we do. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is, you touched upon a very important thing, that really building the confidence that people are safe when they come back to the workplace. So what you're saying is the dry kits for the drivers, food and sanitization products and related ones is important part of reaching out and showing that we take care of the people so they are safe in the workplace. That is very good. Maybe if I may ask Renata, when you made your opening comments an hour ago or so. You said that I'm not the expert, so I want to listen in. So if you listen to the conversation so far, are you encouraged with what is happening, or how do you see things developing from the perspective of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals?
Thanks, Renee. No, great to listen to the minister and to these two industry leaders. I think that I'm encouraged by definitely the efforts that have been made and that have been described to us right now. And I'm sure that the workforce in the MSMEs that are associated with these two industries you know, benefited a lot from the care and the confidence building and the support that you've given to them. I don't know how representative it is of industry in general. I think probably there are many people in MSMEs that didn't get that care and consideration, advance payments, you know, the investments in health and communications, etc. So I think right now we're all sort of struggling to sort of understand the scope of the problem or the scope of the challenge right now. I think hearing your good example, it's really important to get that message out, because I think that you know, there was a call made by the government, and I think it was the Prime Minister himself who appealed to employers to extend every help possible, to continue salaries, etc., etc. And you know, as you go sort of down into the supply chain, and you have a large number of small and medium and micro enterprises there, I think there are probably a lot of examples where that was not done. And so I'm really encouraged by what I heard today, and I have a lot of respect for the two industries that or the two companies that we've heard from. I just don't know how representative it is of across the country. And I ask myself also, when one thinks of the economy overall, I mean, there will definitely be some sectors that will be able to come back more quickly, and also maybe come back better. We heard about the cement. I mean, the fact that most of the demand for the cement, maybe not all, but most of it is domestic. It's somewhat easier to get things sorted out in a domestic context, although I'm sure it's not actually very easy, but it's probably easier than internationally. So I'm sure there's some sectors where it might be easier to have all the dots connected in the supply chain, and other sectors where it's going to be really, really difficult. And I think at the end of the game, you know, given what the migrants had to endure, you know, these last few weeks, many of them, I guess one of the dangling question marks that I have in the back of my mind, listening to the very, very interesting session so far, is, yeah, how many, as you said, Renee, how many would want to come back at any time soon? I know that the opportunities back in rural villages are probably very, very limited, so they may prefer to stay for a while, but have no choice but to have to return. Is there any possibility of using this moment to perhaps organize the supply chains differently? Is there anything that could be done to invest in the rural sector, so that those who would not like to really come back soon have an option? Those are perhaps very big existential questions that might sound reasonable in terms of a proposition, but almost impossible to actually implement because it's so complicated. But I think that, as you know, everyone is saying that this is an opportunity to think differently. So I guess I'd like to hear from both of you how much space is there to actually do things differently, concretely? I mean, and how could that be done?
Okay, thank you, Renata. Of course, we are talking if the MSME sector. I think the numbers are about 6.5 crore MSMEs, so that's 65 million business, and there is a number of larger transnational corporations or larger national corporations dealing with them. So we see a lot of diversity among them, and certainly the good work of some should be promoted and be taken also as an encouragement for others to try to follow suit. I wanted to go maybe to some of the questions which are coming on from the participants, which we can see there. So I have a question from Jalandhar on the hand tool sector, which is more specifically linked to UNIDO and the UN system. So maybe I just respond to that. So saying that, of course, there is now new opportunities because value chains are rejigged. So for hand tool sector, which is a traditional strength of India, there's opportunities for growth maybe. But he's asking, yeah, where's the money going to come from, the funds to adopt new technologies? And I think that the UN, the United Nations as a whole, but specifically also UNIDO, we don't have we are not a financial institution, but we are technical assistance providers. So we would see that the UN can help, and we are actually with our energy efficiency project and with some other projects active in Jalandhar. So maybe we can talk offline on what kind of support is available. But our trust from UNIDO's side has been very much, we need to make sure that the money which is now available from government is also precious money. And that needs to be spent in the best possible way. So we need, if I use a business term, we need a return on investment from the government side. So the government is releasing 10% of GDP. That's a huge financial burden to all of us. So we need to see that we get return on investment. So that is where the element of capacity building and preparing businesses would come from. So then a little bit following up from the question from Renata, actually, I got two questions also for the two, for Tata and Dalmia, because one of the questions is, the participants is saying that with this additional requirements, there will be the cost of transportation will go up. Is that something that you already notice? How can you accommodate for that? And then related to that a little bit is the question on, of course, I also referred that in my introduction that there's a high degree of uncertainty. So we can go back in lockdown. We don't know how the pandemic evolves. So are you changing your forward planning and your procurement practices a bit to accommodate for this uncertainty? So, Mr. Rice, may I ask you to start on this issue of transportation cost, and how do you look at forecasting and procurement and planning?
So as far as procurement cost is concerned, the choice between us was the additional cost and revenues possibility, or don't take the cost, don't move material. So we took the choice that we will take the additional cost for now in our stride, but ensure that material moves and ensure that revenue generation starts happening faster than otherwise it would have happened. So there are a lot of products, essential products, but for the material which moves through trucks, had we not done that, possibly the revenue stream would have delayed. And that additional cost, although in the beginning it will hit us to an extent, but I think it would more than get compensated for the additional revenues or the revenues starting which we have done in the beginning of the lockdown when things were at standstill. So as we move forward, those costs will keep going down because the highway dhabas have started. We made a lot of representations to the government. Everybody made. Government also came out with guidelines. Dhabas started. So we don't have to now provide food. We had to do that for initial 1 week. Then when we have given some sanitizers, some hand gloves, some personal hygiene. So those things we in any case are giving to other society stakeholders. Also, we are giving it to our various 4-5 districts. Some of these things we are doing into our districts closer to our operations and also in other places. So that was part of it. So I think that's not a very major cost component for long term. It's a small cost for a short time. But from the supplies perspective, we had a couple of critical raw materials, and the supply chain was from China. So when China was under lockdown and we had issues, so we immediately started looking at it. We looked at it to how long we have this material for, and then we did both. For the same material, we developed alternate raw material supplier within India, and secondly, we also looked at alternate material. What is the alternate that we can use? So we worked on both. So when we came with this issue, we had about 70 days inventory, and within 1 month that inventory went to 180 days because it was a low cost, very critical material. We ensured that our material availability is ensured so that production does not get suffered. So we did some of those things. And some of the places we found that some of our packaging material or raw material suppliers who were in red zones and who were in containment zones, and the possibility of them coming out of those zones was comparatively low, probability of high to continue in those zones. So we started developing alternate vendors, 2-3 alternate vendors we developed, so that the options available with us are more, operations don't start, and MSMEs get additional business opportunities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. Would you like to comment on this transport issue and the sort of changes in planning and forecasting?
Yes, so before that, I would like to just touch upon 2 issues which Renata had talked about. She talked about the SDGs. So you would be happy to know, Renata, that Dalmia Bharat Group is mapping 14 out of 17 SDGs through our business operations very closely. And we are known as the greenest cement company of the world. So we have the lowest carbon footprint we have about an average of 550 kg of carbon emission per ton of manufactured cement. So and we are the member of EP100, RE100, UN Global Compact, and all these organizations which are on resource efficiency, energy efficiency. Coming back to the question on the transportation cost and going forward, what you were asking. So luckily, we use both rail and trucks. So as far as railways is concerned, the Ministry of Railways gave certain concessions which eased our cost with respect to demurrage and wharfage charges, and also providing 40% concession on rail freight on certain types of wagons which were not being used by the railways, which are lying like idle in the yards. So that helped the cost with respect to the upstream supply chain and even downstream supply chain, because some finished products were also going through rail. And as regard the trucks are concerned, transportation cost of trucks, I echo the sentiments of what Mr. Shoaib had said, and exactly we went exactly as per what he said. We also did the same thing. Coming on to the way forward part which you were asking. So now, we have suddenly realized that we need to fast track and accelerate our digital supply chain network. So we are already on the path of making the SaaS-based plant management logistics system. The vehicle tracking system is already there. Now we want to fast track this whole thing, which was going to happen in the medium term, probably will happen in the short term now. So we will use technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning to generate predictive information of demand. So with past data and all these disruptions are happening. But despite the disruption, as I talked about, we had such close interactions and so much of communication with our complete stakeholders that once this lockdown is gradually easing, we are not finding any great turbulence, that there are no broken networks anywhere which need to be rebuilt. So we are able to gradually move ahead. The only flip side is that the construction, which caters for 60 to 70% of our demand, construction industry has not taken off. So as a result, the demand flows, that is the offtake of the finished product, is that much slower. But there is a pent-up demand which is actually opening up. So that pent-up demand is being served right now. And we are also requested the MSME Minister, Mr. Gadkari, to actually kickstart all these infrastructure projects in the respective villages, so that these migrant labor who are there in those villages can start getting employed in their respective areas, what Renata was talking about, so that we can start consuming our product there. So we have requested them to do that. And another point I missed out, what Renata was talking about migrant labor, is there's a CSR team of ours in one of our plants who has reported that 1,000 odd migrant labor have come back to the state of Odisha where our plant is located. So what we have done is we are doing a skill mapping of these people, their prior skill mapping, and we're trying to map that skill and see as to what we can do to further, through National Skill Development Corporation, whether we can do a recognition of prior learning program for them and give them a formal certification of the government skill development program, and then start getting them some jobs either in our plant or in the vicinity of that area. So these are the things I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. So I think for most the sentiment is that even if there's some higher cost, it's better to get moving and to get some cash flow going. So rather than sit down and say I can't do it and be reluctant in that sense. So there's a little bit of a cost associated, as I may phrase it that way. I wanted to. There's a very specific question on the question and answer question, which is referring to UNIDO. So what UNIDO is doing, so in the MSME sector, I did not in my introduction expand too much, but in the MSME segment, we have a number of sectoral projects ongoing, particularly in the pulp and paper sector right now, and in the automotive component sector together with ACMA. And there is just one project was recently finished with the bicycle component sector, and we are expecting that will resume, and also with the leather sector is quite likely to happen. We have also a number of cross-sectoral projects which are focusing more on like energy and environment. So under the energy program, I think we're dealing with about 30 clusters of MSMEs around the country. So we are suggesting to government to roll out this B3C and make this more like a permanent facility to invest in the ecosystem for MSMEs. I think I wanted to maybe, because I look also a little bit at the time, I wanted maybe a short response from our two industry panelists before then closing on the issues of which is very much in the media on the global value chain. So the global value chain has been this phenomenon that manufacturing has split between countries, and India is moving up, and the Prime Minister and others are talking about now. This is the opportunity for India to go back into global value chains. So maybe could I ask for some perspective on what Dalmia, what Tata are thinking on this prospects of expanding now the scope of India's participation in global value chains?
And Renee, if I could just jump in and also request our two panelists if they could give us also some idea in terms of how optimistic are you in terms of the recovery, and I mean the speed of the recovery. I have no doubt that India will recover, but how are you feeling these days? Optimistic, mildly optimistic, somewhat optimistic, very optimistic, etc., etc.
Yeah, so with respect to Dalmia, I can say that the monsoon season is arriving. So in monsoon, generally our business actually takes a bit of a dip. So we're just hoping that the moment we get over monsoons in the month of October, we are highly optimistic that the government also would be kicking off with its 100 lakh crore infrastructure pipeline projects which they've announced, plus the monsoons would get over. So after October, we feel that cement, which is also an element of index of industrial production, it always appears in various economic data. And also, one fun fact about cement is that it is the most consumed substance on earth after water. So maybe many of you will not be knowing this. So we are very, very highly optimistic that after this month of October, we should be going at a good pace.
Okay, Mr. Rice.
Yeah. Our view is that it's an optimistic view, but cautiously optimistic, because we feel that possibly it might over a period of time the demands will start opening up, and demand growth will have, because retail is still not open. Retail is slowly opening up. So by the time retail opens up, by the time it's unhindered opening of a full scale retail sector, travel sector, leisure sector, service sectors, because a lot of service industry also today is operating from not full scale there. So I think it may be slightly cautious optimistic is our current view. But on global value chain, we feel that there is a lot of opportunity available there. because what it has shown, what this pandemic has thrown, is the issue of if the people depend too much on the supply chain, which are long long response time kind of thing, then people will start looking at closer home supply chain solutions. Also, there will be a lot of manufacturing activities which might move out of China, and we are looking at what could be the areas of interest for us, what could be the areas of opportunities for us. I'm sure many of the other companies and groups also would be looking at it. And also, what are the critical things where we can do here in India, make in India for India, and make in India for the globe. So some of those opportunities which this pandemic has thrown, we are trying to look at it, and we are evaluating options.
Thank you very much. I thought there was one more question on the question and answer the chat box, which maybe I might refer to. So, what is kind of strategies for MSMEs to look at growth and rejuvenation or revitalization of business? So we've addressed that in the B33 platform, and we have basically said that let's look, if you want to grow, let's look inside on what is your core competencies, because we have a tendency that MSMEs are always looking at where do I see the opportunities outside, and then jump at everything that's moving, and that might not be the most meaningful strategy. So we've provided some guidance on how can you look at your core business strengths and then move from doing what you're already doing well to doing that even better with energy efficiency or with production efficiency, or doing what you're already doing well in a different way for different products and so on. So I would refer back to that rather than taking that up in this seminar, because I see we are also coming up to our agreed time frame. So I would like to thank the panelists and then hand over to Gauri to wrap the webinar up. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And yes, we've neared the ending time for this webinar. And I think there has been, it's been an extremely interesting conversation. It has been an extremely insightful conversation, and a lot of very valuable inputs have been provided by the Honorable Minister, by Renata, by yourself, and by our esteemed panelists. I don't think one can really encapsulate everything that we have discussed in a few minutes, but the two or three things which really came out very loudly to me one was communications, that this is the time when companies need to communicate and over communicate with the MSMEs, with their supply chains, so that their confidence is rebuilt. This is the time when the MSMEs need that confidence building, they need the support. And I'd like to, again, call out what Mr. Rais said, that yes, we are all optimistic, but cautiously optimistic. If we do things right, and if we do things in the way and what the UN espouses in a clean, green, equal way, there is no doubt that there is an open, absolutely open arena for us to move forward and move forward in a much better way. So I would just also like to thank, of course, I'd like to thank Renata. I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists for joining us at this for this webinar. I'd like to thank our participants for being there and for listening to us. Renee, thank you very much for your inputs, and I'd encourage all our participants and the panelists to go on to b3cmsme.org, share it with your partners. There is also an email ID out there, so if you have any inputs of content that you think will be of value to the small and medium enterprises, please feel free to write in and share your inputs, and share it as widely as you can. And this is also a start rather the start of a series of webinars. We are possibly going to go sector specific as well. So watch this space. We will be communicating with you. And I would also like to just call out one point that Mr. Sharma, you made on the SDGs and the UN, your UN association. And you are also a part of the forum that we manage at the RC's office, which is the UN India Business Forum, which is partnering with UNIDO at this. So we have been working with your leadership on multiple issues. So that's another name to call out when you talk of the SDGs. So with this, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone and watch this space for more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.